Hey guys, Kevin here for The Leftovers, Season 2, Episode 8, International Assassin. And holy shit, guys, talk about an hour of catharsis. Really, that's what this episode was for me, I have to say. This episode, I think, was all about catharsis. It really was. I mean, this entire episode was trying to figure out what's going on here, and especially the ending of the episode. So many amazing moments in this episode, and it's really hard to pick a favorite of this season, guys. It really is, but I really feel this came very close to my favorite of the season because it really was a fantastic episode. I absolutely loved it. There's so much to love about this episode, and there's so much uncertainty in this episode that I definitely really love. But let's just get into it. The episode itself, I really didn't know what was going to happen because, as we know, Kevin was supposedly killed off last week. Supposedly killed off, and I really didn't know how this episode was going to begin. So then we start with a bathtub full of water, and he comes right out of it. He's naked, and he's alive, and it's really interesting. So he's supposedly waking up from the poison. He asks for air. He doesn't know where he is, and and he's as lost as we are. He doesn't understand what's going on, and that uncertainty is one of the things that works so well in this episode. There's no point where he is completely in tune to what's going on. He looks around the room and appears to be in this hotel room. And I thought he was in like the Murphy's house, but no, he's in a hotel room. So he looks around the room and all of a sudden the TV just starts blaring. This happens several times in the episode. We eventually realize why. But he quickly turns it off. He sees a plaque on his door that says, "Know first who you are and then adorn yourself accordingly." I kind of feel like that's the message of this episode and of Kevin's character in general. He sees a closet with his old Mapleton uniform inside of it and a dress shirt, so he puts on this whole suit, because all that was left was a suit and a dress shirt, which is very interesting. And then there's this man who, he gets a knock at the door. It's from a man who gives him flowers, and says his last name is Harvey instead of Garvey. So Kevin says to give him a second and takes the flowers. The man goes in anyway. He goes into the bathroom, finds his wallet in his pocket. He tells him he has the euro. He only has euros. The man starts coming at him with a knife, and Kevin pushes him against the wall, breaks mirrors, and he punches him out and eventually knocks him out. So that was an insane scene. Just again, guys, this is like the first 5 minutes of the episode. It was really crazy, I have to say, but it was really awesome. So Kevin has a bad cut on his hand and puts a bandage around it, and then opens the elevator, but a loud alarm goes off because he took the fire elevator. So he goes down the stairs and finds a little girl near a pool by herself, fully clothed. Very important scene here. Definitely. That's not something you normally see. Just a little girl by herself is not something you normally see here. We'll get into what has to do with all that, because there's a lot of symbolism in this episode, guys, in case you can't tell. This is an episode that a lot of people aren't going to understand, and that's something I really like. Just from this entire episode, you can tell it's going to be a very different episode, many points. And he goes down the hotel. The receptionist asks him if she could help him. He tells about the flowers sent to his room, and after she knows who sent them, and she says all deliveries come from the concierge, who is Virgil. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I mean, Virgil supposedly committed suicide, and now he's in this hotel room with Kevin. So he asks him what's going on, and Virgil doesn't appear to know him, despite Kevin trying to get him to remember. And he writes down the name and number of a professional who can help him. However, it's actually an address to meet up, and I was thinking that Virgil wasn't going to remember, but luckily he did, because if we were going through this whole episode without Virgil just not remembering, it would have been like we were in a circle with this episode, and I would have been really upset with that. But luckily, Virgil does know what's going on. He just can't tell anyone because obviously they think he's crazy. So basically, Virgil's in this hotel. He seems to be running it, and he's going to talk to Kevin about what's going on, which I thought was interesting. So basically, he leaves the hotel room, meets up with Virgil at the meeting place, and he asks him, he then basically, this was very interesting. He sees the little girl drowning, which I knew was going to happen. I mean, when we saw her by that pool, I'm like, she's probably going to drown. He jumps in to save her. He starts chest compressions, and she eventually wakes up, and a man, very important character, asks him what he's doing, but he's talking to his daughter, telling her she doesn't know how to swim, and he says to take it easy, and the man tells him to mind his fucking business. This appears to be his daughter. I say appears because eventually what we find out about this girl. I'll get into that, though. So Kevin leaves the hotel room, meets up with Virgil at the meeting place. He asks him if he drank the water, and he says that he didn't. Virgil tells him no matter what he does to never drink their water there, and Kevin asks where they are because he knows it's not a fucking hotel since someone tried to kill him, and he says it makes sense, it's a pitfall of his chosen application, and Kevin asks what it is, and Virgil says to look how he's dressed and tells him he's an international assassin. So this is basically a plan that I guess he set up, and he asks if he's fucking serious. He says that's why he checked in the hotel. Kevin says he didn't drink. He drank the water. He didn't drink the water because he tells him to not drink the water. He says he drank the shitty game and then he woke up in a bathtub. Virgil says stop thinking in straight lines because Patti does not know who he is, and she is his target, and he asks if she's there, and Virgil says that she will be there in a couple of hours for the campaign, apparently running for president. So you can definitely tell that something weird is going on here. You don't know where Kevin is. You don't know what's going on, but this is clearly the afterlife. This is clearly Kevin having to face Patti, and this is clearly the thing that Virgil told us about in last week's episode, the last episode where he said you have to face Patti. So Kevin asks what the fuck he's talking about. Obviously, he has no idea what's going on. We're as lost as he is. And he says he's going to say it one time, and he has one shot at it. And he says he is registered under Kevin Harvey. And by the way, this plan is pretty genius, I have to say. So he said he made a generous contribution to her campaign, which guarantees him a meet and greet. And when she gets there, they will call him in his room, and then they will bring him down to her suite, where he will be searched for weapons. And once inside, he will ask to use the washroom, where he will find a gun and silencer. And he needs to walk out, point the gun, and not hesitate because she will try and deceive him. So he says he does that. It will all be over, and he will be delivered from this place, and he can go home. So I thought that was a very smart plan, and Kevin obviously doesn't really fully understand it, but he's gonna go along with it because he just wants to get rid of Patti. He doesn't want to hear her name. He doesn't want to be in this situation anymore, and he knows the most likely if he gets rid of Patti, he can get the fuck out of it wherever the fuck he is. So Virgil says he'll be like the Godfather, and Kevin asks why he's here, if he had to die to get there, what he's doing there, and he tells him he's atoning, and he is atoning. So we basically realize that Virgil most likely killed himself to be Kevin's guide. If you remember, he talked about, there's a guide, and Virgil wanted to be Kevin's guide. So, yeah, Virgil basically died because he wanted to help Kevin. He didn't kill himself because he wanted to essentially kill Kevin. He did because he wanted to be his guide and die with him. So he tells him to not leave the room until they call him. It's not safe otherwise. He sees a bunch of GR members, including Gladys. So you can definitely tell this is the afterlife because Gladys obviously died. And it was cool to see some characters in this episode that we know died in the show. He goes back to his suite and basically he puts on another suit. He looks at the flowers and finds a card that says, "Get well soon," but there's no writing in it. So the TV then blares again. It won't turn off. It seems to be about a fire. An alarm goes off. Kevin sees the man and his daughter and tells the man they need to evacuate. The man says it's a false alarm, and if it's not, they'll fucking burn. Kevin leaves the hotel room and sees a janitor holding balloons. He asks if they're for him, and he asks if his name is Mary Jameson, and he says no. They're told they can go back in, and he sees Mary getting balloons delivered to her as another man starts fighting him. Now, this was interesting that Mary was the one that got the flowers delivered to her, because I think this is showing that Mary's not dead, but she's dead like her soul is dead. Like her soul's there, but her body is not there. So I'm pretty sure that whole thing with Matt, I feel like he's imagining it. I feel like this proves that unless Mary died and we don't know, I mean, for all we know, she could have died and Kevin doesn't know that yet because he's obviously not there right now. And by the way, guys, the score to this episode, that classical music was awesome. I loved it. Every time that someone came up to him, he started battling them. There's another man as they fight in the elevator. Kevin is handcuffed to a chair. The man punches him, and Kevin's brought to meet with Gladys, who says she works with Patti, who's a senator. She apologizes and says they need to vet anyone that gets close to her and just needs to make sure he belongs there. They give him a very fucked up lie detector test, may I say. They give him a lie detector test, but it's very fucked up. And when he says Kevin Harvey, automatically it's a lie, which gets him cleaning spray sprayed into his eye, which I don't know if that's a legal torture method, but, this really isn't the real world, so you can't say they're doing anything wrong. And he says his real name. Gladys asks why he checked in under a different name. He says he doesn't want anyone to know who he really is. And she says it's a pretty lousy alias. She asks him what he wants so much money for. And he says he just wants to be in the same room as her. And she asks if he smokes. And he says he does. She asks why. And he says because he's addicted to nicotine, which gets him more breaks. It's a lie. And this was interesting. He said he smokes to remember that the world ended. And I thought that was an interesting line because, it is a good question. Why does Kevin smoke? And Gladys says to uncuff him. She uncuffs him, gives him water, and tells him that Patti will be arriving shortly. She tells him to freshen up and they'll come get him when she's ready. And she says they're thankful for his support. So basically that he went through. So he puts water in his eyes to get the sting to go away. The TV blares again, and then there's another fire, and he realizes that it's his dad, Kevin Sr., trying to contact him. Now, if this is supposed to be, if this is supposed to be heaven, is this indicating that Kevin, if this is supposed to be like the afterlife, is this indicating that Kevin's father is dead? I don't know. Is he simply communicating with his son through the afterlife? I mean, I don't see how that's possible, but, we know that Kevin Sr. could talk to ghosts and saw people that weren't really there. So it's very possible that this could be happening. And Kevin Sr. is in Perth in Australia, and he says they're staying in the same room and tells him he is fucked up on the shit they call God's tons, which very funny stuff. I love it. There was constantly a fire in the background. He's like, you gotta do something about that fire because that'll cause the alarm to go off. And he realizes that basically he said he really hopes this is real. He asks if they got the flowers he sent him, and Kevin says the card was blank, and he says it didn't say get to the well, which take her to the well. He's supposed to take Patti to the well. Fire alarm goes off again. He says he's supposed to assassinate her, and Kevin Sr. says that he's not an assassin. He definitely should not assassinate her. It's just not going to be a good idea to do that, even though Virgil said to do that. Kevin Sr. says he needs to take her to the well, and he doesn't understand what's going on there. So he's then informed that Patti is ready to see him and goes to meet with her. He goes into her room, gets a pat down, and the man asks what happened to his hand. Kevin says that he cut it, and the man tells him he's all clear and that Kevin is harmless. Gladys sees him, and she says she's sorry about the unpleasantness before, and they say it's just water under the bridge, and she tells him the senator will arrive any minute. He's welcome to talk about anything he'd like as long as he doesn't talk to her about North Korea, gun control, abortion, or Neil. Very important subject, Neil, of course, her ex-husband. So she tells him to not blink when the flash for the photo goes off. She will only give him one shot. He asks to use the bathroom, going along with the plan. Now, apparently, he's given them $50,000. He's donated that to them. So he goes in the bathroom, and Holy Wayne is in the bathroom. Holy Wayne we see in this episode as well. Again, you can definitely tell this is obviously for people that died, because Holy Wayne we know died. So even though Tommy's story was bullshit, that part with Holy Wayne dying was true. Holy Wayne did die. So Gladys asks if he's thirsty, and he says he's fine. Gladys says that Patti is in the elevator and should be there shortly. Wayne asks if he knows him, and Kevin says he doesn't. He asks if he's sure. He asks if he's ever been to one of these before. Gladys says this is her first, and Wayne says he feels like he was sitting on the toilet the last time he met him. Kevin says it's crazy. Wayne says deja vu, and he explains what it is. He then goes into the bathroom, and obviously he wants to do whatever he can to find the weapons. Before he can, though, Wayne tells him she's here. Patti comes in, and she says it's nice to meet him, and we get this really interesting scene between Patti and Kevin. Because she obviously is making it seem like she doesn't know him. She obviously is gonna put him, get him to stay there long. She's gonna make this challenge hard for him. So she says she's sorry about all the security, but they received credible intelligence that someone may be trying to kill her, and she asks why someone would do that. And Kevin plays dumb and says he doesn't know. And this is interesting. She says because she sticks to him, and she says throughout history, assassins have never motivated by money or revenge. They're motivated by beliefs, and their targets embody beliefs that enrages them would be assassins. Why? Because secretly they share that belief. And one of the examples is John Wilkes Booth. Apparently, John Wilkes Booth hated slavery, which is very interesting. She still killed Lincoln, and she asked him again why someone would want to kill her, and he says to tell him, and she said they'd rather put a bullet in her head than accept her truth, and he asks what it is, and she says he wrote her a check for $50K, so he should know, and he says she wants to destroy families, and she says to write that down because that is fucking brilliant. And she tells him a story about a man she met that had a baby in her arms. And this entire scene, you can tell that something is going to happen. Something's going to happen before someone leaves this room. So she said it's gonna be fine, and basically she says that she tells him a story about a man she met that had this baby in his arms, who handed her the baby and just walked away, and no one could find it and no one could claim it. And the baby is now in an orphanage. It's gonna be fine. We'll have a difficulty attaching to people and giving, accepting love, but that is no longer a difficulty. It is a strength because on October 14th, attachment and love became extinct. In an instant, it became cosmically abundantly clear you can lose anyone at any time. And she says their cave collapsed, and they can, and that was interesting. The cave. Remember the cave, the first scene of this season that connects it, and they can spend all their times digging through the rubble looking for signs of life where they can transform. And I like how they try to throw references in there. I thought it was well done. It really worked well here. And basically, Wayne says and basically we then see that she asks him how they heard about what they were trying to do and heard about the GR, and he talks about how Lori left him, and he says it's no more painful. And she says no more painful than when Neil left her, and she tells Wayne to shoot him in the face, but then informs them that she's just kidding. Wayne literally pulls out the gun ready to shoot him. It's pretty crazy. So she says she doesn't give a shit about Neil, and she says they should get the photo done. Obviously, he wasn't supposed to mention Neil, but he did. He asks if he can use the bathroom. She tells him to remember to leave the seat down. He runs to the sink, cocks the gun. He gets ready to shoot, kills Wayne and Gladys, and then before he kills Patti, she says she's not Patti. Her name is actually Rhonda Gennaro from Lowell, Massachusetts. They found her on Facebook, and the campaign paid her and even sent her to Columbia for plastic surgery so she'd look more like her. Tells him she's a double and a decoy. She's never even met her, and whatever she's done to not kill her. Now, this is interesting that she said that. I think it's bullshit, but it was very smart for Patti to do this. Obviously, they hired a decoy. This is not really Patti. So that way, Kevin would not find her as easily as he thought. And Kevin still kills her. He still kills her because, like Virgil said, don't listen to what she said. She might try to trick you, so he kills her anyway. And then he realizes, though, that he's still there. So clearly this has not worked out. So he goes up to Virgil, asks him why he's still there. And again, Virgil pretends he doesn't know him. Kevin says he's sick of meeting in parking garage, and he asks why he's still there. Virgil then kills the bird, and everyone applauds. And Kevin asks if he drank the water, and he says he was thirsty. And now we know why he can't drink the water. You can't drink the water because it will trap you in the hotel, and you won't get to go anywhere else. So that definitely makes sense. And again, little reveals like that I really like because it shows, okay, that's why you should not drink the water. That's why you shouldn't do this. That's why you shouldn't do that. They handle that well in this episode. So he takes off his bandage and the cut is completely healed. Kevin sees that the man who tells her Patti locked him out, and now it looks like he's too. The man asks if he wants a drink, and Kevin says, because Kevin's locked out, and Kevin says he does. He says his name, and he asks why he's there. Kevin says it's business, and he asks what line of work he's in. He says he's an international assassin, and he says he's done for the day and eliminated his target. And it turns out she was using a body double like Saddam Hussein. The man thinks about how great that life could be. Kevin asks him what he does, and he says that he doesn't do anything. He's dead. He choked on a piece of chicken, and now he's stuck in the hotel, and half the people can't even remember their names, and the other half are running around like crazy, doing crazy shit like what he's doing, and he can't find a single woman to take a dump on him. And Kevin realizes that this man is not just any man. This man is Neil. Neil has died, guys. He died, and he then realized the little girl in his room is not his daughter. And I was thinking they're going to reveal that Neil was like a pedophile and tried to have sex with her. But that's not what's going on. We'll talk about this. Neil says he should have let her drown. Kevin takes back the beer, chokes him, snaps his neck. He knocks on the door. The little girl answers. She's wearing a sign that says she needs to keep her mouth shut. And we realize the little girl is Patti. So Patti basically put herself into a little girl to make this harder for Kevin, but also made things very cathartic for him because now he's met her ex-husband, obviously. So this is very interesting. Patti asks if they're leaving, and he says yes, and she asks if he doesn't want to go. He says he thinks so. They leave the room, and Kevin says they were looking for a well, and Virgil finds a pamphlet, says it's in Jarden, Texas, and gives him directions and tells him to have the safe trip, and Patti says he's going to throw her in it, and they head to the well, and on the way there, Patti reads from the pamphlet. They find the well. By the way, guys, I love the way they play that classical music and then just cut it at certain points. Really good stuff here. Really shows the dreamlike world we're in. Definitely really like that. So on the way, Patti reads from the pamphlet. They find the well, which is on fire, and basically he's not scared. He's then attacked by a man, and he said he's not scared. He's then attacked by a man who asks him what he's doing, and the girl, and basically with the girl, and he says what he's gonna do, and he asks if the girl's resisting, and Kevin says no. He said, now we don't know who this man is. This is not a character we've seen before. I thought this was Goodheart at first, but it's not Goodheart. He said he thinks it's because he wants him to do it just like a woman. She believes she can improve him. And Kevin says he doesn't understand. The man says that's obvious. He tells him he has a choice, cross or jump. And Kevin asks why he'd do that. The man says it's because he doesn't want to kill a child, which Kevin insists that she's not a child, which she's not. I mean, she's just in the body of one. So he says she is, and if he does, it will change him. And Kevin says none of this is real. He tells him this is more real than it's ever been. And Kevin then unties himself and asks the man how far the well is. He said it's a mile. There's no road, and he will have to walk. He's gonna go through with this. He's not gonna do it. Obviously, he wants to be rid of Patti. So the man whispers something to Kevin. Patti notices, and we don't know what he says. So Patti asks who that man was. Kevin says he doesn't know, and that line of him saying that this is going to change you is very interesting. We'll get into that at the end of this episode. But Patti asks who that man was. Kevin says he doesn't know, and she asks what he said to him. Kevin says it's private, and she asks if it's about her, and he says it's nothing and tells her they need to walk. They walk to the well. She tells him she's tired, and he says he'll carry her. The man watches them leave. They walk to the well, and Patti asks if he wants to drop her in or push her in, because pushing is probably easier. And I really didn't know what Kevin was going to do. I mean, this scene, I was honestly on the edge of my seat, because this is a little girl saying all this. By the way, the little girl who played Patti was pretty spot on. She really understood her character very well. I really saw this as Patti as a little girl. So he says it's hard. She asks why. He says because he feels sorry for her. And I like that he didn't really want to do this. At the 11th hour, he really didn't want to do this to her. So she asks if it would help if she closed her eyes, and he says no. She asks if it would help, and if she says she deserves it, and he says that's not true. She starts listing reasons such as she's ugly, or she's fat, or she's a bitch, or things like that, and he should do it. And he tells her to stop. He pushes her in, and he gags knowing he did that to a child. He cries, and then we get what I think is the most cathartic scene of this episode. Like I said, this entire episode I think was about Kevin having catharsis with Patti's death. That's really what I think this was, and this scene I think really symbolizes that, because Patti is back to her normal form. She says help please, and Ann Dowd in this scene, damn was she good. I mean, seriously, she was great in season 1, but Patti did not get to have this kind of scene in season 1. I love this scene here. She says to please help her. He goes into the well. She asks him if he's okay, and she tells him this one piece of information that I think really just leaves him with something. She wants him to look at her in a different way. She doesn't want to be remembered as a terrible person. And it really shows that even though some of these people do really irrational things, let's face it, Patti is a very bitchy woman. She's not really the nicest woman. She was kind of a bitch at times, and definitely obsessed with power, but this scene, I really felt for her, and they really did very well, and it really goes with the deep character stuff they've been doing all season. So, basically, she tells him how she was on Jeopardy, and her plan was to win $50,000. That's why she wanted Kevin to give her $50,000 for the campaign, just connecting it there. So, and she says if she could, that she could leave Neil and start over. She just needed something that was hers, and needed to win the $50K, and in going into Final Jeopardy, she had $7K, and Stuart was the 4 reigning champ, and in the green room before the game, he said nothing to her, not a word, and there's a power to that silence. She says the question, it was correct, and she's always been in geography, and Stuart gave the wrong answer, and they told her that Patti had won Jeopardy, and the next night she won again, third night too, fourth night she bombed, but they let her keep everything. She had $65,000 more than she needed to leave him and start over, but she didn't, and she says, and it's a really sad scene because she didn't leave him. She wanted to, but she didn't start over, and she says she's scared. He kisses her forehead and hugs her, and then drowns her, and I really feel the reason Kevin decided to drown her is because that's the last thing he needed to hear from her. He needed to hear this story because he needed to see that, you know what, Patti's a person too. She's been through a lot of things, and he really sympathized with her, and I think he's really getting the closure he needs. I really feel that's the reason that Patti's been seeing him all this time, and why he's been seeing her, because Patti wanted to give him closure. Patti wanted him to come to terms with her death, and now I think he has, and it's a really sad scene, but it's a very good way for her to go out, and that's truly, I think, the last time we're ever going to see Patti, but amazing scene from Ann Dowd, and I really loved it. Honestly, I think that's that's worth a supporting actress nomination for the Emmys. Come on, guys, make it happen. So he then drowns her as he cries. The well starts to rumble. Rocks fall from it. He climbs up. The next thing he knows, he's literally out of his own grave. And I'm not kidding, guys. He's out of his own grave. Why? Because he went through with the plan. The plan that Virgil told him to do failed, but him taking her to the well was his way to get back. Because if you remember, this was only supposed to be a temporary death. But the way he just crawled out of his grave like that was pretty crazy. It does seem a bit far-fetched, but it really works in the symbolism that Kevin has now gotten the closure that he needs, and he doesn't need to live this life anymore. So he coughs and pants. Michael sees him and says, "Holy shit," and that's how the episode ends. And that reaction to holy shit is kind of how I react after every episode, but let's talk about this episode, because holy shit, there actually is a lot to talk about, really. What I love the most about this episode is the catharsis. Like I said, we really got closure with a lot of characters here. The only dead character we didn't see was Christine, which I thought was interesting probably because Kevin didn't know Christine. You know, Tommy knew Christine, but Kevin didn't know Christine. Kevin knew Holy Wayne. He knew who, because Holy Wayne helped him out in the season finale. He knew who, obviously, Patti was. He knew who Gladys was because of that whole case. And I really like the way this was done. Just the concept of it was really cool. Now, this, if you guys know Lost, the other show that, Lindelof, Michael Lindelof, I think his name is, he's attached to it. That was really the idea for this episode. The idea that there's another life in the afterlife. Yes, the ending of Lost is pretty bad. I will say that. It really does not answer a lot of things. It's really stupid, and as much as you could say it's purgatory, which I do think is the idea that it is purgatory, it didn't really go with the show. This show, however, I think to handle it much, much better, because they made it a much more cathartic journey for Kevin. It was less of, let's see, however, the fuck we can make the show weirder. And the creator Lindelof jokes, he only does this to piss off like a radio station. I think that's true, but I think he had to do it for character reasons as well, because it really worked for Kevin. It really worked for us. It gave us closure we needed with some of the characters, and it was great to see, like, Holy Wayne again one last time, Gladys one last time. I definitely enjoyed seeing that, but the whole thing with Mary Jameson, did Mary die in the real world, or is her soul just dead? I feel like her soul is dead, but her body's alive. It's just she's not in it, because she's in the vegetative state. And, they say when you're in the vegetative state, you're kind of, like, dead inside. I feel like that's what that's trying to say. I'm not really sure, though. Is Kevin Sr. alive? No, I think Kevin Sr. is alive. I think he's communicating with Kevin through the TV because of how crazy he really is. I mean, that definitely is going to be very interesting. But it looks like next week Michael really is not going to believe it. How can you believe it, honestly? How can you believe that someone that you put in the grave is alive? It doesn't sound possible, but it happened, and Michael needs to accept that. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. But next week it looks like this has only made things worse. Kevin killing Patti is going to be the first thing that really affects his family, and it really looks like next week they're going to have to go through a huge hardship. Something really big is going to happen. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I really give it up to the writers, because I expect this episode to be everyone's reaction to Kevin's death, and it looks like we're getting that next week. That's what it looks like we're getting, that everyone's going to react to how this happened, and something's going to happen with John next week, and it looks really crazy. We're going to see Tommy next week, so I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with that. It definitely is going to be a very interesting episode. We have 2 episodes left this season, unfortunately, which really sucks, but I'm loving this season as usual. Really loved this episode. I thought this was a really, really powerful one. Honestly, I thought this was even better than last week's. I thought last week's was great, but this episode really, like I said, gave us catharsis. It gave us closure. It really ended the Patti storyline in a way I thought was very unexpected. I didn't expect it to end with us trying to get them to sympathize with their character, because Patti always thought was a villainous character. But it shows that even villains have tragic lives. Everyone has tragic lives. Everyone has to endure things they just don't want to go through, and that's a very good example of that, and I really love that. So Justin Theroux, and, it was great to see him have this arc, and of course, Ann Dowd. I would love to see them give Ann Dowd a supporting Emmy nomination of this episode. She really did a great job, I have to say, and I really loved every minute of this episode. Amazing stuff. But let me know what you guys thought of this episode. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a really powerful one, definitely. I can understand if you guys thought it was weird. The first 20 minutes, I will admit, I thought was very fucking strange. I didn't understand what's happening. I really loved it, but what the thing I like about the show is that I don't need to understand everything that's going on, to love this show because of how engaging it is, because of how much it begs you to watch. I mean, even those like first 20 minutes I didn't understand, until Kevin had that conversation with Virgil. That's when I understood what was going on. Before I was like, what the hell's going on here? And I think everyone was like that, and Kevin obviously was like that as well. One, it really made you stay with Kevin. It made this like you were watching Kevin. It made this like you were right in the room with Kevin, just as confused, which I really liked. But two, it made it so, the show is just so great and it's written so well that the weirdest shit could happen and it's still very engaging. It begs you to watch, and that's what makes it such great TV. I loved it about this episode. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. I absolutely loved it. Like I said, one of my favorites this season by far. Very close to my favorite episode of the season. I think episode 6, The Lens, is still my favorite just because of the confession scene. The confession scene is just, it doesn't get better than that. I mean, the scene with Patti is very, very close. That I will say that the scene that Patti had in this episode, very close. It's a great moment, but there are so many great moments this season that's very hard to pick a favorite. This continues to be the best show on TV. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. I know I keep saying that over and over again. I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for Jessica Jones, which, yes, I did watch episode 5 of Jessica Jones, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.